Welcome to a community built of tomorrow's business leaders. Hey guys, I'm William Freitas, and this is the Socius Podcast. Socius, welcome back to another episode. Today we've got Lauren Ryder from Leading Edge Global. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Will.
So good to have you. We want to know more about who it is that Lauren is. Like, where did you come from? What has you be where you are today? Tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. So first, my background was in technology and project management of software. So that was what I got my degree in. And I thought that was what my entire career was going to be in. And, my dad came from technology. I thought, this is my thing. And I got into work, moved to Australia when I was about 21 and started working. And I actually ended up not getting a job in technology, but a job selling technology and selling what I had learned. And I thought, well, it's a bit of fun, had a great time, but I learned so much about the consulting industry and how to build a consulting company. And so when I did start working back on the client side, I started working as a project manager. It was actually at CBA. And I just found it really boring. I thought, gosh, how am I going to get out of this one? And what I really enjoyed was working with the stakeholders and the people who were using the software. And it turns out there's a career in that, and it's called change management. And luckily, CommBank was such a big organization that they were able to redeploy me to become a change manager on another project. And yeah, I haven't looked back since. I ended up somehow on the biggest program. It was about $100 million program of work, huge transformation as my first project. Yep. And I spent about 18 months and that's where it kicked off my career.
So let's bring it back. Obviously we do change management, which is awesome, but I want to know more about Lauren Ryder and where you started. So you came to Australia when you were 21, you said?
Yeah.
Where did you grow up? I can hear an American accent.
Oh, yes. Nashville, Tennessee.
There you go.
Did you pick that?
Tell us. No, well, I can't say I'm an American accent expert. I'll be honest. I've got no idea if it's north or south. You tell me.
No, that's right. I was actually born in Cape Town. I was born in South Africa.
Got that.
And I left when I was 3 and moved to Nashville. Well, my parents did. I grew up there and then went to uni in Washington, D.C. At George Washington University, and then moved across to Australia. Now, the reason I moved to Australia was because my whole family had moved from Cape Town to Sydney over the past 20 years. And I loved coming to visit. We used to come every year, and I just wanted to sort of be here more. I fell in love with the place, so I moved.
And was your family leaving Cape Town at the time, I guess, because of
like apartheid and all that?
Correct.
Yeah, they felt there was a bit of a pressure cooker. Like they knew something was going to happen. They weren't sure what, but they thought it was time to get out.
Yeah.
And they were all lucky enough to have been educated so they could all get visas to move to other countries.
Perfect. And obviously they're your formidable years, right? As you're moving from, Cape Town to America, Nashville, and then moving to Australia. What was that transition like? Different environments, no doubt exciting, but challenging?
I suppose I've probably always been a little bit easygoing and kind of go with the flow. When I moved when I was 3, I suppose I didn't really know much better, but kind of went along with it. It was more, moving to Australia. That the funny thing was, I always felt more at home in Australia than I ever actually did in America. And I wasn't really sure why at the time. And, looking back now and knowing what I know, and I think it really is the culture and the way that the people are in Australia, very self-deprecating and, have a bit of fun, have a bit of a laugh. And I think maybe my experience, Nashville was Southern and probably, quite conservative. It was very straight-laced and that wasn't me. And I think, moving to Australia, I kind of felt, these are my people.
This is home.
Yeah.
Well, we're definitely lucky to have you. So great to have you. So what is it that has led to where you are? So obviously you went into Commonwealth Bank and you started change management, which can I argue at that point was, pretty a new thing, I guess. Consulting was quite new.
Absolutely. Look, when I first got into the project, somebody called me from the bank and said, hey, we're training everyone in change management who has change in their title. And I said, yeah, sign me up. I don't actually know what I'm doing. And I ended up getting on, and it turns out I was actually one of the first change managers trained in Australia. And this was ProSci, which is still the globally most known methodology. But yeah, we were the first ones really trained. So
What was that, ProSci?
it's called ProSci. Yeah, it's the kind of, I suppose, PMI, Project Management Institute, might be for project managers globally.
Got it.
This one is what most change managers end up getting trained in. So I got in super early. So
It's like a structure that you follow as a project manager?
Absolutely. So change management is just as structured as project management. So you go into a project, you have to analyze what the people are doing today, what they're doing in the future state, and then you work out what that difference is. And the difference is the change, right? So people might be using their technology different, or their roles and responsibilities might be different, or their KPIs might be different, or, there could be all sorts of different areas of change that we have to take them through. And because people believe so much about what they do, the reason that they're there for their role is so important to them, that all of these things that we take them through is really important that we get it right, because you can really upset people by changing even one little thing that they do. You can set people off really easily. So bringing change managers on board for a big change is really the right thing to do.
It sounds like a super significant role. You can either really damage a culture or really improve a culture. And how is it that you highlight what needs to change? Like, obviously this potentially comes with experience, but I imagine you're sitting down with clients and saying, okay, where is it that you want to get to? Is there an element of this is where you should go?
Sometimes we do talk about that. Usually when we get engaged, it's because they kind of know where that future is. They might have engaged a strategy consultant, or that they really know where that future state should be. What we do is we take it to that next level and we help shape it and design it. So it really is kind of figuring out what are all those elements. And, the getting down to the core of it, the things that an organization are built on are people, process, and technology. Right? Those are the core things that we look at when we're talking about change. And so that's how we understand where the new state will be. Obviously, there's a lot more nuances and pieces that go around that, but at its core, that's how we decide to unlock the change.
Yeah. Cool. Let's, if you don't mind, let's dive into, I guess, each of those three elements:
Sure.
people, process, and tech.
Yeah.
People is such a huge element, right? And particularly right now, all we hear about is people complaining about how hard it is to find people. And no doubt within our businesses, we've seen that. It's hard to find good people. But if you can attract the right talent, then you're in good stead. What step do you take the people through, or your clients through, to make sure they find the right people? Is it a personality thing? Is it a role
Sure.
identification? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so the first thing we do is we encourage them to look internally. So rather than always hiring out to grow, one thing they should really look at is how they can upskill their existing workforce. And they might find some sort of diamonds in the rough there that they might not have thought about. You don't necessarily, what we always say is a promotion isn't always necessarily up. Sometimes it's sideways. And so that's absolutely number one. Look internally if you can promote. Now, attracting other people to your business, there's a whole science behind it. The first thing is, you have to have your core right. Right. So your vision, your mission, your values, the way that you have structured that and the way that you communicate it through everything you do, that's what people come in and they'll see. So if you have your core values around open communication, and you get into an interview situation and that's sitting on your website and you're not talking openly about what you do, you've got something incongruent. Right. And so through the whole entire interview process, even the way that a job description is written should be, showing how you engage, and it should be fun and it should be engaging, right?
Yeah,
that's how you're going to get people. That's the first thing they see of your business.
Yeah.
So it's the job description, it's how you talk, how you behave. And then as soon as they get in, you might be able to get someone in, but how do you keep them?
I often find too, on the flip side of things, businesses that, have copywriters write, copy for them that makes them sound fun. I think there's a balance of like understanding what, like you said, your core values are and what it's like in your culture. I mean, if you're trying to depict that you are fun, but day one in that role, you are not fun, like you are running a serious business, there is like a real disparity on what people are going to accept a role for. And then you're really not holding on to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, you have to show it, you have to live it, and you have to breathe it. And I think, even designing your interview process around actually showcasing and meeting other people in the business, not just the direct manager, to showcase what people are actually like. Can I work with these people? Maybe bring in some stakeholders into the meeting. I think you have to work really hard to attract people right now. So kind of, just throw it all on the table.
That's something we've taken, quite seriously within our business is, making sure that there are multiple people within the business that have some element of a decision in the next person in the role. And it's funny because many people would think, they aren't the ultimate decision maker. Why would you give them that ability or that look in or that thought that they have that decision? But I think it's the overall involvement, and particularly for us, we look at building a ownership culture. And I think that's what a lot of these businesses need to do, involving more people to have them buy into the process. And it's so interesting, like obviously that then feeds into your next step, which is process driven.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me more about process. What are the elements? It needs to all speak together, of course, but what are the process elements?
Yeah, so look, when we look at a process, the first thing we do is we'll do a current state analysis. How are you actually working? And we'll map all of that out. We're using an analyst who can do that. But the next key point is, let's put some red dots on this and figure out where the pain points are. Like, where are we actually struggling with this? And, you come up with some really interesting things that you might not have seen. Suddenly somebody goes, oh, we're actually saving like this in 4 different places, right? Or these documents get sent off for approval, and then we start the work before we actually get approval, right? There's all sorts of things that happen in organizational processes that probably shouldn't happen. So it's kind of like you don't know what you don't know unless you map it out.
You get stuck in it, don't you?
Absolutely. And you just kind of go on. But if you actually can write it down and you say, okay, well, this is where we are. These are the pain points. And then you can actually redesign it. And the redesign then can be, processes, people doing things differently, but that's actually integrates really closely with the technology. So there are some super cool technologies out there, like even really simple ones that, a lot of companies don't have to invest a huge amount of money, but can really start putting some automation and workflow within their business without doing a whole lot of work.
And so a lot of this tech, this is something that you help implement as part of that change management process.
Absolutely.
What sort of tech are we talking? Are we talking CRMs? Are we talking project management?
All of the above. So my team, it looks like project managers, change managers, business analysts, test. So that's kind of our team that we work with. So the project manager would run the project, and we could bring in the technical people to help design that solution. So some of the systems, we definitely put in CRMs. We do a lot of work with ERPs, core finance systems. So there's a lot of different ones that we work with. But at the end of the day, we can be completely agnostic as to what that technology is. We can help them choose it. As in, we can help them write out their requirements and pick the right solution that meets those requirements, and then help them roll it out. But what solution it is, it really actually makes no difference to us.
Yeah, it just sounds like you're impartial in that sense. Like that really is, for me, the best advice. When you're not attached to the end result, what particular technology they take on, it makes such a big difference, because people get attached to a solution and they're saying, okay, well, how can I fit my business into that solution?
Exactly. And it often happens, I think, when companies overinvest in a particular platform.
Yes.
Right. And so how can we extend it or get add-ons? And these days, getting APIs is actually pretty straightforward. It ends up being quite core. So I think, organizations need to say, okay, well, if we can use this platform, great, but there might be better solutions out there for us. So you just got to keep really open-minded about the whole thing.
You raise a great point, because many businesses will invest so heavily in a product or a solution. At what point do you make the call to pull out?
That's a really good question. I think, when it starts impacting the business, it starts impacting the bottom line, but also starts impacting the people. So, one thing we find a lot of people aren't necessarily complaining when the system isn't working, right? Nobody's going to go up to the CEO and go, hey, excuse me, my system's really slow. But what we find is that if you actually start digging, it can actually be the system that's impeding the performance of the business. So, generally I think what happens is, and why they call us in, is because something has happened when they realize that they need to upgrade or change. Now, one of the things that people often come to us with is their system is, I suppose, out of date, or they can't upgrade it anymore, right? And they think, okay, we'll either upgrade or we move. And, these days everything's web enabled. And so you don't need to deal with that upgrade stuff anymore. But there's so many businesses stuck on legacy systems. So, and the other interesting thing that comes up out of this is the costing of these systems and the business case and how different it is. Because, people used to buy a system and you'd have it and you just pay for it and you're done. Now, web-based systems, you pay a monthly rate. So, first of all,
it's super easy to move on. And
yeah, exactly. It is. I mean, obviously it gets stuck into any system, but interesting, sometimes they kind of sell you on the lower cost, but you end up paying more over time.
Yeah.
They get you.
Absolutely. I think everyone's moved to that whole subscription model and, recurring income, and they all get you on it. And I've got Netflix, Stan, and the whole lot. It's a disaster. But, I think what you raised was such an interesting point around, the system that you have in place isn't always the best system. And you only pick that up once you get external validation or external advice, because once you're in the system, you don't see outside of the system. You don't see what you're in. So it's really hard to think outside the box when you're in the box.
Absolutely. No, and look, one thing we do say though is, if you've already committed to a particular system and, it wasn't that long ago, what are ways that you can, as I say, kind of get to the edges of it, right? How so many systems are built with lots of different functions that you wouldn't even know about. How do we actually go, okay, well, it might not be today how we're using it the most effective way, but perhaps it does exist within the system. Maybe we can extend it, right? Maybe there's different ways we can do, or we can get an add-on, as I say, maybe API something in to extend it. So it's about, you do need to kind of sometimes take a step back, look around and go, can we do things better?
Absolutely. I know, even within our team, sometimes I get caught in, okay, this is our system and this is the extent of it. But sometimes the team go, actually, can we push it this a little bit further? And then if we don't explore it or if we don't investigate it, it just never really gets explored. And then we find these efficiencies and we're like, wow, like we can actually do this now. We can do things differently. Our delivery becomes even better. So that definitely resonates with me.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
What would you say is the number one factor that's led to your success?
I think it's probably just sheer determination. And also, I'd never considered failure. So I've actually had a thought the other day. When I was little, my mum said to me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I can't believe I even had this flashback the other day. And I said, I want to be the vice president of a company. In America, it's, it's not CEO, it's vice president or president. And she looks at me and she says, well, why wouldn't you want to be president? And I'm like, okay, sure. Actually, that's a great idea. Why wouldn't I? So, I had that type of person behind me, right? My parents were both very successful and worked really hard, and gender was never an issue. It was never brought into any conversation. Didn't matter that because I was a girl or a woman that I couldn't do it. It wasn't even a part of it. And so, yeah, I think part of it is, there's an innate desire to achieve. Like, I think that people either have it or they don't, and I just work really hard to achieve what I want. But also, I never considered that maybe something isn't going to work.
Absolutely. See, I want to, this topic fascinates me. The innate desire of wanting to achieve, and many people can consider whether it's like, whether you grew up in a well-off family or, a poor family, and whether that innate difference or that innate wanting or desire to achieve is greater in either or. But I really think it's nurture. It's not just environment. And you mentioned it there with your parents or your mum saying, why would you not become president? Let's unpack that a little bit, because that definitely resonates for me a lot more. Like, what is it that your parents did on a regular basis? Or can you remember any other situations where they continued to try and have you get mentally, Lauren, you're going to push the end, like you're going to push the boundaries of what is possible?
Absolutely. So look, we had a family saying, And it was, if you're going to do a job, do it well. So basically, don't even bother trying unless you're actually going to put 100% into it and deliver well. So that was really the core of what it was, and how we grew up. But I remember having a conversation with someone when I was a kid, and somebody said, "Oh, are you going to university?" And I thought, that's not a question. In our house, it was, which university are you going to?
Yeah.
Right? So I think there was, my parents never, ever gave me any type of option, to opt out at any point. So it was I was born with this expectation of doing great things and succeeding. And I think, it worked. It worked for me, I guess. I kind of pushed every edge and every envelope that I could.
And do you almost have this like confidence within you that everything will work out because you just know you're applying yourself to everything?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's no, I've never, I mean, look, I'm sure I've failed at some things, but I don't see it as failure. I see it as a lesson learned. And so I think that's, I wouldn't even call that as an optimist in me. I think that's just kind of me saying, this is who I am, and I want to grow and I want to learn, and everything I do is just going to add to my little toolbox, and this worked and this didn't work. The fact is, if you don't try, you're never going to succeed. So, push that envelope, try something different. But yeah, I think it's all just mental, I think, for me. Is that you're right, that confidence that it'll work.
Absolutely. It's definitely mindset. I see a lot of people question whether positive beliefs are a thing and whether they, positive thinking is like overrated. I don't think it's positive thinking. I think it's mindset. I think it's strength. I think it's the desire to wanting to achieve and the belief that you have that you will achieve. I think that's definitely nurture, not just the environment that you're in, but definitely nurture throughout life. And so I can see that within you, and that resonates with me as well. That confidence that you will achieve, and whatever it is that you do, whether it's a failure, you just view it as a lesson.
Yeah.
I think there's no such thing as a failure. There's only a lesson or a gift. And someone once told me that, and I've taken that. I've taken that with me, to various aspects of life, because regardless of whatever action or reaction there is, what seems like a failure now ends up being a gift down the track, and it's just about how you see that.
Absolutely. And when I take it into business, the term that I use with my clients is fail forward. So give it a go. If it doesn't work, that's fine, but use that to move forward in whatever it is that we're doing.
Fail forward. I like that. I've never heard that.
Right. I think I made it up. I'll trademark that one.
Trademark, Lauren Ryder. I like that. Give me, what is an issue that you currently see in today's business world that you think needs changing?
Yeah, look, I think the issue that always comes up in, when we have worked across so many businesses, large, medium, and they always have the same issue, and that is around communications, right? And I don't understand why it is still continually an issue. I even went to a cafe the other day, and these guys were sitting next to me at breakfast, and they were talking about the board not communicating with the members. I mean, this is prevalent everywhere. And so I think if people knew more about how to communicate better, how organizations are structured in order to communicate, right? And when to be open and what type of messaging to do. Look, and I suppose I can say that this is my area of expertise.
Yeah.
This is what I do. But and I love educating people about it. It's quite eye-opening when people go, oh, that's why we're in trouble. Right. One of the reasons that not communicating is a challenge is because employees in an organization, when they maybe hear murmurings or they don't know, they automatically assume the worst. Yeah. Am I going to get fired? Is there something wrong with the company? Are we going to restructure? Whatever the thing is. But employees know. They work there every day. They feel it. So, improving that communication and how we communicate, how often, and what we say, so important.
I think we could broaden that and make communication an issue, not only in today's business world, but in life in general. I think with our home relationships as well as our relationships in business, communication is key. So that definitely resonates with me. And, I've always, as a leader, thought it would be better to over communicate at times, to have your people always involved and always aware of what you're thinking, because I think authentic leadership is communication and active communication.
Absolutely. And I think as a business leader, when you do that and you not only communicate, it's not a one way, but it's a two way. But if you are saying, I think maybe we should expand into this area, if you actually bring your team on to have that conversation, they can help you to co-create that new solution. And you actually get the buy-in from day one because it was their idea.
I love that.
Right? So you're better off including people in decisions up front where appropriate. Obviously, there's some decisions that aren't appropriate, but for the future of the business, bring people on the journey with you.
There's nothing worse than building a business that is full of yes people. People that nod yes to their boss and expect that that's what they need to do. You want a business or an organization that continues to challenge the status quo. Is this the right thing for us to do? And for everyone to own that decision, I completely agree with that. And it comes down to open communication on both levels.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the business leader or the person, within the business. So I love that. Now, last question, tell us a little bit about your vision for not just only, I guess, your business, but potentially the vision for your industry. Obviously we've spoken about change management and how that's developed over the years and how you continue to, push boundaries and help businesses move forward. But what is your vision for the business moving forward?
Yeah. So, when I talk about what we do, I say, look, most of the projects we're engaged in when we talk about transformation, it's generally called digital transformation because we're putting in new software or doing something online. But what I always say is the technology will work. We can configure the technology to work. Don't worry about that. The problem that you're going to have is with your people. That's always going to be the problem. Funnily enough, I was listening to the news last night and I couldn't believe it. This guy was talking about, last week there was something about we had the most, sustainable day. People were using solar farms and wind farms, and we had more electricity used by that than there was normal. And he said, look, we're ready to roll that out across Australia now. So we've got the technology. He goes, it's the people that are going to be the issue. And I thought, I say that. That's it. So it's absolutely across everywhere. So the question is then, what do I do about it? How do I make it work? So there's a thing that I'd use, a method, I think I call it, and I call it leader-led change. And so when I go into organizations, rather than them coming to me as, change leader, I actually train every single one of the leaders, first of all, in change management and in leadership and how to help people through the change process. And I'll coach them through from the beginning to end to make sure that they are on board, that when issues arise, we address them immediately, right? And so everyone who I've worked with then suddenly has been upskilled in how to deal with people and change better. So my vision for the future would be to get every single manager, every single leader trained in change management and how, what it means, because every business is about change. If you're not moving forward, you're not doing it.
Change is the only constant.
Exactly. And so how do we train? So I feel like change management should be a core piece of the learning of how to become a leader or how to become a manager.
I actually love how ironic that sounds. Digital transformation is not about tech.
Yep.
It's about people. It's about how the tech correlates to its processes and how the processes impacts people.
Absolutely.
I think that's such a valuable point, and I agree. I think it excites me. Your vision excites me that, having people understand that it needs to be leader-led, that's the only thing that'll make it successful, completely resonates with me. So thank you. Appreciate that. Lauren, that's been fantastic. It's been great having you on the show. I have no doubt that listeners will want to potentially reach out to you. So how is it that they can reach out to you? What are the mediums?
Sure. So easily on LinkedIn, I'm Lauren Ryder. And you can find our website as leading-edge.global.
Perfect. Lauren, thank you again.
Thanks, Will, for having me.
Socius, thank you for joining us today. Please hit the subscribe button if you've enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to be part of the Socius community, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay in touch. Cheers.